Yeah. All right. So yeah, I was just saying that today with us we have Alex Weyer, who is I think one of the most knowledgeable persons in the field of IP. Given his background and his involvement also with IP, which is one of the most, I think, advanced also companies in the field of IP valuation, etc. So we've been exchanging with Alex for the past 1 year, 1.5 years, correct, Alex? Correct me if I'm wrong. And now, since we don't have too much time, I would like to give the cyber floor to Alex to start with giving us a short presentation of what you do, where you come from, what's your path up to now, because here with us today, we have a number of aspiring entrepreneurs. And this is a great initiative that has been put together by Makis, and I was very lucky to have met Makis. And this initiative on a Sunday morning is one of the best volunteering initiatives, I would say. So here we are, a bunch of friends, but still learning from each other, trying to grow our knowledge and our network. And up to now, it has proven to be quite fruitful. So having Alex today here with us, it's another proof of this nice Sunday morning coffee exchange of experiences, knowledge, and valuable advice from people as experienced as Alex. So thanks to Makis for putting this together, and a big thank you also to you, Alex, for being available to share your knowledge and experience on IP, and tell us a little bit also about IP, about IPW. And there is also a bonus about this meeting today, because Alex, who's gonna talk to us a little bit first-handedly about the latest evolution on the IPW and IBM interaction. So yeah, so Alex, the cyber floor is yours, and the colleagues, I would say, they may intervene. It will be some kind of a more interactive session rather than, okay, we conclude the chapter and then we have Q&As. Would that be fine with you, Alex?
Oh, yes, yeah. However you want to manage it, I'm quite happy.
Perfect. So if you have questions, just raise your hand and I'll just pass the floor to the person who would, to the inquirer, and we shall move on as such. Alex. Hit it.
Okay, yes, well, first of all, thank you, Elsa, for that kind and over enthusiastic introduction for me. And also thank you to Makis for organizing this. Basically, my IP journey started back in 1998 when I was asked to lead one of the teams that were putting together the IPR help desk, as it's called, pilot project for DG Enterprise. That was back in 1998, and the objective that we had then was to raise awareness of the importance of IP for SMEs and for those undertaking EU-funded research activities. I was quite, I suppose that saddened is not too strong a word, when a couple of years ago I was asked to help the current IP help desk, as they've rebranded themselves, and they highlighted that they were still having the same problems that we had 20 odd years ago with awareness, people still not realizing the importance of IP, still not knowing how to go about protecting their IP from a really basic level, which is quite sad. And I think some of the latest EUIPO statistics that I've seen show that only 9% of EU SMEs have actually protected their IP. So that's quite staggering, and having to address the 91% that haven't, it has got to be a priority for the Commission. There was another statistic that I got a few days ago from an intangible assets webinar that I participated in at the EUIPO, and that was that 38% of SMEs have no idea about IP. I mean, it's a little strange that you would think, well, I'm assuming that the 91% who don't protect have no idea also about the importance of IP, but the Commission highlighted that this figure, sorry, the EUIPO highlighted that this 38% who have zero understanding of IP was important, and I would quite agree. I mean, SMEs are the backbone of the European economy, and they need really to be aware of the importance of IP. So just to bring you up to date, I mean, started in IP back in 1998, currently doing things for IPWE, as Elsa mentioned. IPWE, basically based in Paris, and they are looking at patents primarily, monetizing patents, but they're doing some interesting things with AI and DLT, and they've currently got a project going with IBM, who they're very close to. They work with the IBM system, and they're looking at what everyone is calling these non-fungible tokens, which basically are digital receipts. And so they're looking at how, in brief, because it's quite complex, in brief, an NFT can be linked to a patent, because at the moment you don't know who owns a patent. You might know that a patent was granted back in some time, but you don't know who currently owns the patent. And NFTs could be a good way of actually showing who owns the patent. So that's being explored at the moment. I think that they're talking about some platform being up by the autumn, something like that. So there's quite a lot happening on the AI side, and also IPWE are looking at using AI for releasing value from SMEs, patents and other IP that they have. Excuse me. I mean, we all know that if you have IP, an SME is more likely to experience some growth. IP can also help with the valuation of the company, and if you've got IP, you're more likely to get some investment from the markets, etc. People, you know, fund managers, etc., who are looking to invest in certain tech that you have. And one thing that IPWE are doing, which is quite interesting, it's not live yet, but it's very, very close to being live, is actually ranking the SME with their competitors. So you're looking at the value of the IP that SME has got, and you're comparing it with their competitors basically, and giving them a ranking and trying to explain to them, look, if you invest more in your IP, if you get another patent, if you get a trademark, if you protect, then you can increase your ranking against your competitors. That gives you more likelihood to get investment, etc. So that's very, very interesting. I think the opportunities that there are out there for AI are tremendous. It's an extremely powerful tool. Obviously, there's some, and I know Elsa, I think we've had this discussion about the ethics of AI, but for me, I feel that if we don't wake up and start using AI certainly in the IP space, then we're going to be left behind by the likes of China and the US, who are already way, way, way ahead of us in using AI. So yes, there's the ethics that has to be considered, but I think we don't want to put too much the brakes on research, on trying to understand how AI can release value, especially in the IP space. So basically, I suppose, over my 20 odd years, I've been looking at how to help SMEs and researchers get value from their IP, develop an IP strategy, excuse me, and really understand what their IP can do. Because if you don't have any IP, then your business won't go anywhere, basically.
Yeah, which brings us actually also to the first question. In your opinion, what should an aspiring scientist, entrepreneur, current or future entrepreneur should know about IP, actually, starting from the basics?
Well, they have to, I mean, when we started the help desk back in 1998, the means of protecting IP was very limited. What we were trying to do was to make people realize that you've got IP, it's your thoughts, basically. Whatever you're doing, whatever research you're doing, it's your own intellectual property, and you should be trying to protect it. We basically try to highlight to people the importance of recording what you're doing. So if you're setting up a research project, you've got to record and note everything you do. And the best way that we found to tell people to do that was just to have a bound notebook, and a notebook that you can't remove pages from. And so everything that you do is in this notebook. And to be honest, that's a bit what the blockchain can do today. That can act as the same sort of thing, to record exactly what you're doing, who's doing what. Apart from that, you've got to make sure that you protect your IP that you develop. And you can do that just by making sure that you know the team that you're working with, that you have good contracts and good links with the people that you're working with, have NDAs, make sure that if you're doing something, that the people you're working with are not going to go and take your knowledge, etc., and go and doing something else with it. Trade secrets, just keep things to yourself. Keep it in a tight-knit little group, or if you're on your own, it's obviously even more easy, because you don't have to tell anyone what you're doing. You just get on and do it. But have a strategy. Be aware of the fact that whatever you're doing is some form of IP. If you're creating something, if you're writing something, it's your copyright. If you're developing something, an idea, etc., you might want to eventually patent it. Obviously, that's going to cost money, but you've got to, first of all, get the basics done, which is understand what you're doing. Be aware of everything that you're doing, record whatever you're doing, and think about how you protect your own idea. It's your creativity, it's your innovation. Don't give it away.
Excellent. Before I would like to draw from one statement that you made, but before that, I would like to give the floor to Makis, who's raised his hand. Makis, please go ahead.
Thank you. Alex, thank you for being here, honestly.
That's
one
pleasure.
quick question. The IP is only for people that are their startup or their company has to do around research, or there are more categories of entrepreneurs that should be interested on IP?
Well, it's for an author. If you're writing a book, you've got copyright. It's for anyone. A designer, if you're at home working from home and doing things, whatever you create is your own idea. It's your innovation. It's your creativity. So it's everywhere, basically. It's everywhere. If you're a cook, making you decide to make a meal in a different way, and you've got a copyright of the recipe, perhaps. So it's everywhere. Whatever you do, it has some IP, whether or not you protect it, whether or not it has value for you and what you're doing, or if you just do it and you don't think about it and you carry on. But everywhere is IP. It's not only SMEs and entrepreneurs and researchers. We all do it. You do it. Everyone. I do it. And just be aware of it. And if it's a source of income for you, then protect it.
Okay. Thank you.
So basically, there are, maybe just to mention that there are different ways, Alex, and there are different ways to protect your IP, like trademarks and copyrights and patents, etc., etc. So just
but
to draw from
those...
please
Sorry.
go ahead.
No, I was only going to say a lot of those people worry about, because when you talk about IP, everyone thinks of money. It's going to cost me if I protect my IP. Obviously, at a certain stage, there is that, but I think there there are some main challenges, I mean, that I feel that SMEs have to be aware of. And I wrote these down, forgive me, it's too early in the morning to get my brain in gear sometimes. But I mean, that I've got 5 main challenges, I think, that we need to address for SMEs. The first is that they often have no knowledge about the support that's out there for them. And I think one reason for that is that there are possibly too many initiatives. I mean, every patent office have their own initiatives. The Commission have, I think I'm correct in about 5 different initiatives. There's not one DG that deals with IP. You've got, I think almost every DG probably has someone that deals with IP. You've got the European Patent Office who have their initiatives. You've got the EUIPO that have their initiatives. You know, so there's too many things going on, and there needs to be, in my humble opinion, sort of one overall person looking at this. I know that the Commission have recently got a SMEs, I think, I'm not sure that's his name, a Czech fellow whose name escapes me at the moment, but he's sort of dealing with the Commission's IP, strategy, and he's responsible for SMEs. Apologies, I can't remember his name, but I think there needs to be someone like that for IP. There must be someone somewhere in the Commission who's looking at the overall picture of all the IP initiatives and seeing, okay, this is a duplicate, let's just focus on this, because I think that's what's happening. Also, training is too legalistic. And that's one reason why I don't like to get too much into detail, because I feel that you're going to put people off if they feel, oh, I've got to get a lawyer involved. Yes, you do eventually, but there are basic things that you need to know, the strategy, etc. And also there is a lack of strategic advice. So trying to explain to people how important it is to have an IP strategy, that really does need to be highlighted. And there's very much a negative perception, excuse me, of intellectual property. There's often no link with a business strategy, and people regard it, SMEs especially, as it being complex and expensive. And I think when you're starting a business, the last thing that you really want to be focused on is having to pay a few €1,000s to get an IP lawyer to advise you on what you can do. But there are these free services out there. No IP strategy is another of the things. There seems to be no awareness of the importance of IP among people that are developing, I think what are called C-level executives, and there's no capacity at the moment for people to manage IP on a daily basis. That's one thing I feel that AI and DLT are going to help with, because I know that there are quite a few, and that's something that IPW have been looking at, and others, is using AI to actually help companies to understand instantly, on demand almost, where their IP, what the value is, what IP that they've got, and what they can do with it. And I think there's an awful lot of untapped financial potential of IP. I know that that's one thing that the Commission has been trying to focus on a lot, is to get, and they've done this through the European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund, and that's trying to get hedge funds and others to invest in SMEs, basically. But there's difficulties for these investors to actually find the SMEs that are worth looking at. And that, in fact, is something that IPW have been doing. But and investors are also not using IP or seeing IP as an asset. And I think that the difficulty in this, the financial reporting side, is somewhere that the accountancy system has to address, because if we all know that it used to be that tangible assets were the most important thing. So your building, if you had a company, your warehouse, your factory was the most important. That was where your money was. But now we're in an economy where it's the intangible asset that is the value. I mean, look at the value of some of the big multinationals. They have almost no tangible assets. Everything is their intangible value. And also SMEs regarding, sorry, trying to finish this, that SMEs find it that it's difficult to enforce. They think it's expensive. There is often, again, as I said before, there's a lack of support. There is no, I think there are a few insurance schemes to help SMEs with protecting their IP in case there's any litigation. But the ADR system is also very, very much underused, alternative dispute resolution. And I know that's something I believe that the EUIPO is looking at the moment. And I know WIPO have a very, very well established ADR system. So that in a nutshell, I suppose, I'm sorry to chat a bit too much, but that for me are the sort of main challenges that we have to deal with.
That's what we are here for, to give us your wealth of knowledge, to share with us your wealth of knowledge, which brings me to another question based on what you said before about the strategy. I think what quite a few of our colleagues would be interested in hearing would be how can they best design, develop and deploy an effective IP strategy? That's a question. And then if this can be scaled, this strategy, depending on the stage that the person, the scientist, the entrepreneur is at a specific moment where they would need to start thinking of and start designing, developing and deploying an effective IP strategy. Before we go to the answer, before we elaborate on this question, I would like to give the floor to Yanis, because I see he's raised his hand and he's got a question. Yanis, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Elsa. Yeah, and I will take it from a little bit further from your question. It will be a good idea if we can hear from Alex about a more practical guide, like, you know, a guideline or how the potential startuppers or small companies, SMEs, could start doing this IP strategy, how they can start executing, in which stage it's, let's say, more sufficient to start looking into the IP. But also another very, I think it's vital question is, especially for those that are in very pre-seed stages to do a startup, they need to go around and form a team. And in order to form a team, you need to share your knowledge, share your ideas. So basically, you're sharing your concept, your potential innovation, let's say. So how this could be combined with protection of your solution, coupled with sharing and try to find co-founders or investors. Thanks.
Okay, and
Okay.
Alex, just give me, if you mind, there is another question in the chat room by Dimitris. Dimitris, would you like to pose the question by going on video, or, you know, I can read it out, but I think, you know, you can go on video. Okay, great.
I'm online. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to ask that because it's a very tight, the rules that the WIPO and all the other organizations that they create all these rules for paying all this money in order to file all truths that you need for your IP, plus the expenses when you see a copy of your product in the market, like lawyers for years of waiting and paying like that. I think that means doesn't leave so much space to let's say, people that they don't have the ability to pay all this, to have all this money background, cash background back to, in order to invent. Because once you invent, you don't know what you're gonna need. Because okay, if you're many years inventor, you are familiar. But when you're a new one, you go to the ocean directly.
Okay.
So what's your advice like for to personally, I'm sorry, we need a new field of WIPO, or that they have to, like now with COVID, to the states, for example, they gave 1 year extra for the patents, and WIPO couldn't do something like that. Even I contacted them twice. You know, there were many difficulties during the COVID, and for especially for a patent that just came out when COVID started and like that. So it was all in mess, and no extra time, difficult to get funding. In order, also another problem, that the evaluation of the patent.
Dimitri, sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you, because we are gonna come to the valuation question a little bit later.
Okay.
I'll just pass the floor now to Alex, so that he will have the opportunity to answer to these two questions, because the valuation is coming right up after that. We're gonna discuss about this. He's also he's very knowledgeable in the subject as well. Alex, go ahead.
Right. In order to try, hopefully I remember both questions in full. I mean, basically, yes, your IP strategy has got to be linked very much to your business strategy. So I suppose the easiest thing to say, and I don't want to duplicate what's already out there, but there are, I know the help desk, the IP help desk, as they now call themselves, do have tools to help you with putting together an IP strategy. Likewise, outside of this meeting, if anyone wants to email me with specific questions, I'd be very happy to help and go into in a bit more detail, but I don't want to go into too much detail now. But basically, in order to get your business, whatever you're doing, off the ground, you will have a strategy for your business. That strategy has to include awareness of the fact that you're developing IP, and that unless you want to throw your what you're developing away, you've got to protect that IP, because it has value and it will help your business grow, help your business develop. So basically, if you're a researcher just working on his own, then you're fine. You don't have to worry about passing the information to anyone else or to getting anyone else involved. But as soon as you start working with other people, you've got to have NDAs, you've got to have legal documents that protect your IP, that make sure that whoever you're working with is not only going to contribute, but is going to keep secret and keep just within your little group what you are developing. Because theft of what everyone calls trade secrets are quite rife. And if you don't have solid legal protection with your team to make sure that everyone realizes they have responsibilities and that there are consequences if you don't follow through with a legal agreement, then and that isn't going to cost you a lot. It's not going to cost you like getting a patent or something like that, but it's something that you've got to get done. So IP, your business strategy, your IP strategy has got to be intertwined, and you've got to protect your knowledge. So therefore, you've got to make sure that you trust and that you work with as small a team as possible. Don't go, if you go off for a beer with some friends at lunchtime or in the evening, don't go chatting about what you're doing, because There could be someone, I mean, it sounds peculiar, but there could be someone there that's listening. And don't give out any information that you don't have to give out, and don't give out information to anyone who's not in your little team. I think that's the best.
I do not
Thank you very
know
much.
if Yanis also question has been answered. So Yanis, is there something else that you would like Alex to elaborate on regarding your question on how a startupper could better deal with IP and how it happens at pre-seed stage? Did I miss something, or Alex, could you comment a little bit on this? Could you elaborate a little bit on
Sorry,
this?
I don't know.
Alex? Okay.
Elsa, I'm having, I've got the thing crashed a second ago and then restarted, and
Okay.
you've frozen. So I don't know.
Okay, now you can hear me properly?
Yeah, now I've got you. Yeah.
So basically, I was just getting back to what Yanis asked about what advice would you give to a person who has just created or is thinking of creating a startup beyond what you just mentioned, and especially, you know, at pre-seed stage. I know that I know also a little bit from the interactions that people who enter into the entrepreneurial world, most of the time, it is not automatic for them to go and seek out legal advice and go and seek legal advice on how to best protect whatever could become intellectual property out of which they could derive some financial benefits.
Yeah.
So, Yanis, if I missed something from your question, please go ahead and add to what I just mentioned. So, Alex, if you could elaborate beyond what you just said, by focusing on a startupper at the pre-seed phase, and how could such a person better address this challenge?
I think my main thing would be, yes, obviously, if you're looking for funding, whoever is going to fund you is going to look to see what have you got, what have you developed. But if I understand that at a startup, you're just getting things together, you're not going to have the investment perhaps to get a lawyer involved. But as I said, one of the main things, the lack of knowledge about the support that's out there, there are free tools, free services that will help you. So take advantage of them. You know, the main IP help desk, they have free service. They have a helpline. You can drop them an email, you can ask them, and they will get back to you, and they won't charge you for that. So, you know, use these free services that are out there. This is something that the Commission's trying to push, and I think everyone who values IP and realizes the importance of IP will say to you, use what is out there at the moment. It's free. You don't have to go to a lawyer at the beginning. When we started the IP help desk back in '98, patent attorneys were up in arms because they thought that the help desk was going to take away their business. But that was not the objective. The objective was just to get people to be aware of the importance of the IP, to get them to realize that there are free services out there. Yes, when you go through certain stages, you are going to have to get a lawyer involved. If you want a patent, you can do it on your own, but it's extremely difficult to do it on your own. You know, so there are lots of tools, there are lots of support out there. But to go back to the question, any investor, if you're looking for finance, is going to know what have you developed, what's your plan, what's your business plan, what's your strategy, are you protecting your IP, are you aware of the fact that you've got IP, do you know what to do with what you are developing to make sure that it's secure, because no one's going to want to put in even €1 into a business that has no idea of their IP, that is just going to be letting the money come in and letting the money go out. You've got to protect it because an investor wants to see a return. If they like what you're developing, if they see that you're aware of the value of IP, they will put money in. That's what the Commission's putting funds with the, to get investors to look at SMEs, to invest in high growth SMEs. Unfortunately, most of those high growth SMEs have patents. So that's got to be, if you can get a patent, that's got to be a sort of long-term objective, but there is the cost involved in that. So be aware of your IP, have a strategy. There are free services out there to help you understand more than I can do in the few minutes that we've got here about how to develop a strategy. But just know what you're doing, protect it by making sure that you trust and you've got bulletproof agreements with your team. If you're on your own, it's fine, but if you've got a team, you've got to protect your IP, and that will come through a legal document. So that probably is where you might have to get a lawyer involved. But again, there are free services out there where they will give you a template for an NDA, and it's easy. Do it. It's free. Get out there and do it. But protect your IP, and otherwise, no one is going to want to invest if you can't show that you know what you're developing, you know what you've developed, and you know the value of this. That no one will invest unless you do that.
Exactly. And just to add a little bit on what Alex just mentioned, this brings us back to the beginning of the sessions that we had, Makis. Remember even when we discussed about what's your MVP, know your MVP actually. It's business strategy and IP strategy, they come hand in hand, basically. So if you want people to trust you and invest in you, okay, and in your business, you have to be able to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about. Designing a proper IP strategy enables you to develop a more clear idea of what you are doing, of what solution you're proposing to a problem that you have identified. If you have identified the problem, this is what we've been talking about over the past sessions as well, and helps you put your thoughts in order, and somehow also coming face to face with the harsh reality that there may be somebody out there who's doing exactly the same thing or something very similar, and your idea might unfortunately be not that genius or as original as you may have thought at the beginning. But hey, it's better that you know this from the beginning and try to adapt to something more edgy, if you wish, rather than go on forever thinking that you're doing something great and facing walls, whereas you could have done something greater if you had managed to put an IP strategy in place alongside your business strategy. But yeah.
Only do remember the free tools. Go to your national IP office. Exactly. That should be your first place to go to, because obviously they'll deal with you in your language.
Exactly.
Go to your IP office. They have tools. All of them do. There's not one that doesn't.
Yes.
So
and unfortunately, you have to do the work also. Each one of us, we have to do the work a little bit ourselves as well. We have to sit down, search, study, understand. Otherwise, it doesn't really work. Right, Alex?
Yes, actually, there's one other thing that I should have mentioned. The EUIPO at the moment have their SME fund. And with that SME fund, I think it ends at the end of this month, and then I think in July, something like that, it'll start again. But basically, they're giving you, I'm not sure if they'll pay for you to register a trademark, but certainly they will help fund that, and you can apply for also to have an evaluation of your IP, the strength of your IP. They've got funds available. So that's a service that the Commission's doing, the SME fund. So that's well worth doing.
Perfect. Thank you. I see that we have 2 questions. I'll pass the floor to Panos. Please go ahead, and then to Yannis. Sorry for having kept you waiting. The floor is yours.
No problem. Thank you. Alex, I would like you to, if it is possible, to guide us through the basic steps of filing this, and give us an estimation for some of us who have no idea about it, how much it costs. And if it's, I understand it's worth it from the way you are presenting it, but sometimes it's not easy for everyone to compensate on expenses. So just give us a guideline, the steps that we have to follow.
Is that for a patent?
Patent or a copyright? If you have a product, what do you do with it? Develop product, or if you have a new application, for example, many startups have applications, new things that come out. This is exactly the way. Okay, you can go to your IP home office, and then you get some guidelines from them. But actually, what are the real steps that we have to take?
Okay.
Thank you.
Shall I? Oh, okay. Sorry, wasn't sure. I mean, basically, the steps you have to take. I mean, it goes back to one, the strategy, one, the business plan, two, the strategy. So when you've got your IP strategy, then you know your path, I suppose, where you're going with your business. To protect all of this with copyright, you've got it's an automatic protection once you do something. I would recommend, as I said, I think at the very beginning, that you have some form of record that you keep of exactly what you're doing with your research or with your business. If anyone's doing something, just record it in a notebook, or these days you can use the blockchain to record things, similar to what the non-fungible tokens can do with the patents, etc. That is being explored at the moment. But the cost, it can be, you can find that your IP office can help. As I mentioned, the EUIPO has quite a lot of money available under their SME fund, and they actually do have some other services which will help you put proposals together or put, if you want to request a trademark, they will help you with that. If you want to request a design, they will help you with that as well. And through some of the national patent offices, they've got a service where they will cover the cost of you having your IP evaluated. Now, actually going to protect, as I said, the EUIPO will only do trademarks and designs. They won't do patents. The cost of a patent is a lot, and you've got to, I mean, everyone knows that it's not only the fees from the patent lawyers, but the national offices. And remember also that a patent is territorial. So the more countries that you wish to protect your patent in, it's going to be more money. Basically, if you've got a good idea, I think you've got to find an investor who believes in you, who believes in what you're trying to do, that you trust, and an investor that will help you. Because obviously for most SMEs, they can't afford to go and get a patent. And I think everyone realizes that. But you do as much as you can. You protect. If you can't go for a patent, make sure that it's a secret that only stays within your company or your little group. Don't let it go out. So protect as much as you can your idea by having a good team and secure NDAs and secure agreements with your people. Then try to get some investment. You can go, as I said, to places like the European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund, they've got venture capitalists and hedge funds that are looking to invest in SMEs in the EU. And there's loads of money just sloshing around out there, waiting to be put into companies. But obviously, if someone's going to invest in your company, they're going to want something back. So there, you're probably giving away all your hard work. But it depends upon what you want. My feeling is just try to develop it yourself. Try to find investment that will not take away your idea, that will add value to what you're trying to do. But it is going to be a cost, and it's a big cost for a patent. As I said, for trademarks, etc., it's less of a cost. But you've got to have your strategy, your business strategy, your IP strategy, and then start to work out, why do I want to have a patent? Why do I want to take this to get a patent? What are the benefits? What countries can I go to? So it's a huge process of putting the ideas together, getting the plan. Why do I want this? How much is it going to cost me? Because it is going to cost me a lot to get a patent. But how can I recoup that? How do I, if I get a patent for this, how do I figure with the others in my industry? And that's something that IPWE have been doing with their paradigm report, which is looking at how particular companies fit in to the industrial landscape, I suppose we'll call it, similar to what you can do with a patent landscape. Look at what's going on in the patent field around that particular invention, that particular idea. That's something obviously that you have to be doing in order to decide whether or not you want to patent. Has someone already done what you're doing? So the due diligence on looking at what's gone before, make sure you're not duplicating, make sure that, you know, there's an awful lot to be done. Some of it you can do for free, but some of it you are going to eventually have to get an IP lawyer involved in. But there are an awful lot of free tools out there that can help you, can help an SME as an entrepreneur to get an idea of where they can go. So, you know, I hope that it helps in some way. If you want to get, drop me an email and we can expand this off camera, etc. But I'm happy to help in any way I can. But you've really got to know where you want to go, and you've got to know what your business is. You've got to know what the tech is that you've got, and how does it compare to others. You know, do you see a gap in the market where your tech is going to take you and give you success? Then patent.
Is that the same thing?
But
with
if it's just
copyright
duplicating what? Well, copyright's automatic, but yes, so long as you protect. Yeah, I mean, copyright. So long as you protect. So copyright is an automatic right, but I think it's in the States you can protect. There are actually register, but there are registers in the UK. There are registers where you can highlight, you know, what you've developed with copyright, etc. And there's a record of it. But also you can use the blockchain to record that. So yes, with copyright too, protect.
we have to do it in every country, or we have to do it in one of them?
No, territorial. For copyright, I would say I would do it, well, just protect it in your country, first of all. Protect it in your country where you are, and that gives you strength. Obviously, if you're then dealing in other countries in particular. But I mean, if you're talking about the website, where you're putting stuff on a website, the website obviously goes everywhere. So I would just have it protected in the country where you're based. So if you're in Greece, make sure you follow the Greek law regarding copyright and trademarks, etc. Put notices on your website that it's protected, and make sure that you update the website and you keep a note of what you're doing. If it's a software that you've developed, we used to tell people to put some code in the software. If you've got a good developer can put code in the software that only he knows or she knows where it is, and that will identify that piece of software to you. because a developer could go through and see whether or not there's something that they can take out so they can copy it, but put code in that only you know is yours, and make sure it's protected. And another thing that we used to recommend was, if you've got something that you really want to protect, put it in print it out or put it on a disk, send it to your lawyer in a sealed envelope, and which is dated, and tell the lawyer not to open this unless you ask them. So therefore, you have a piece of evidence that we developed this 2 years ago, and this is it. And this fellow has now tried to steal our idea and tried to claim that it's his or hers. So have evidence that you developed this a few years ago or whatever. So that's where lawyers can be useful. Send them something that's free, just put it in a package, send it to him, tell him don't touch it. We might need this at some time in the future. That way the lawyer's got it, and they know it's not been opened. They received this a couple of years ago. You have some proof. That we found was quite useful to lots of people back in the late 90s, but it's still relevant today. It's still relevant.
There are some offices, public offices, where you can put a button or something to be stored there as evidence.
Record, yes. I mean, that's what the blockchain does. That the blockchain is that. So yes, it stores a record and it's time stamped. But lots of people, I suppose, don't trust technology in many ways. So, but there's nothing wrong with a bit of paper or a disk or a floppy disk. Not a floppy disk these days. You don't have them. A stick with some data on it. Send it to your lawyer. Get your lawyer to put it in the safe. Look after it, don't open it, don't touch it, and it's there. You know that that's gone, it's out of your control, but someone has got it that you trust, and they're looking after it for you.
Thank you.
That's okay, no problem. But if you want more, drop me an email.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Talking about floppy disk, I can tell you I have about 10 of them from my master's degree, revealing a little bit my age as well. So I think we all have floppy disks, and I'm thinking of how can I transfer them to a more modern format. I'll see about that. So thank you very much, Alex, about this, which would bring us to the other point that we thought about mentioning, which is DLTs. But before that, I'd like to give the floor to Yanis and subsequently to Dimitris. If you don't mind, because I see that we're already at 11:30. So yeah, Yanis and then Dimitris, because we still have another 3 subjects that we would like to take up with Alex. So yeah, let's hit it crunching until midday, correct?
Yeah, thanks, Elsa. Then in that case, I would like to, please continue with the next 3 subjects so we can conclude at the end. Thanks.
No, it depends, because if you have a question that it's pertinent to what we just discussed, it's better that we raise it now.
Most of my thoughts about patents and who does what, etc., has already been addressed from Alex. And thanks.
Okay, so let's take it up like at the end. Thank you very much. Dimitris, just maybe, quick question to Alex.
I'll be back in a minute. I just got to bring a charger because I've seen that my battery level's low. Hang on a sec.
Okay.
So if anyone else has a question up to now, feel free. I do not know if Makis, if we could bring it a little bit further than midday.
When did we have a problem with that? We always finish at 1:30 or so. So, and by the way, χρόνια πολλά για την ημέρα της μαμάς. Ο Γιάννης έχει βάλει την μπλούζα του Βαλεντίνου.
Oh.
Oh, happy Mother's Day.
Thank you very much to your moms as well and to dads as well. So, Dimitris, go ahead.
Okay. Alex is back.
Hi. Yes, I'm charging
Yeah?
now, so I'm okay.
Okay. Yeah. Super. I have a silly question. Sorry for this, but does the IP protect also manufacturing also in the country that you register, or only sales?
Do you mean the process,
know.
Do you mean the manufacturing process?
Yes. Like when you file in a country for on your PCT, does this cover also that, for example, let's say I file China, and I get China as on my PCT. Does this protect me that China will not manufacture it for other places that I wasn't able to file on my PCT, to cover on my PCT?
I believe it should do. I mean, if you've got, are you thinking of licensing in China or what?
Whatever, because let's say that I have China, I include China on my PCT, and I have other countries that I was not able to cover to put it on my PCT as territories that I cover with my IP.
Right.
Can they do manufacturing like and selling in countries that I haven't covered, or because I have the IP of China, they're not allowed to manufacturing and export in other places where I didn't have a file it as a territories of my PCT?
I don't know too much about the PCT, but I would guess that if you protected it in China, they can't in China, but they could in other countries where you haven't protected. But if you're going to license, obviously, then for someone to use it to do the, sorry, if you're going to license your tech in a particular country, then that license would only reflect in that particular country. I mean, they shouldn't, and obviously that would be then you'd have to bring in lawyers and find out what's going on. But yes, if it would only be for the country where you allow it to be used, the tech, and you would have to get lawyers involved in order to stop it being used elsewhere.
So it covers also the manufacturing. This is what I'm trying to say, that not only the sales, like let's say that you manufacture in China your product, and they can and you can sell it in China, for example.
Yes.
But the same factory or another factory in China can make also manufacturing and sell it to other countries that I haven't registered.
No, only if it's in the license, only if it's in the agreement. If they don't follow the agreement that you have, then you can take action against them.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alex.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, excellent. Alex, drawing from the point on DLTs and IP, something that you have reiterated quite a few times throughout our discussion, I was wondering whether you could explore a little bit in more detail the intersection of AI, IP, DLTs, eventually smart contracts, the link, the intersection, how an entrepreneur, you mentioned this a little bit, whether we could elaborate a little bit more detail, how an entrepreneur could harness the benefits of this intersection, and what would be, let's say, the latest trends on IP valuation related to this, to the intersection of these technologies, or even independently of the intersection of these technologies.
Okay, I mean, okay, yeah, no problem. I mean, at the moment, excuse me, WIPO have a task force that's looking, I mean, lots of national patent offices are looking at the potential of DLT with AI. Basically, it's using AI to interrogate databases, data, basically. That's what the beauty of AI is, what you can train it to do with data. So involving other aspects of AI, which are the machine learning and the natural language processing. Basically, WIPO set up a task force on blockchain for an AI for IP quite a few years ago. And the Australian Patent Office, Rospatent, with the Russian Patent Office, and I believe it's also the UK Patent Office are like the main three that are organizing this. And certainly I know, I mean, IP Australia has for a long time been a lead with all tools to help people with understanding IP. When we first started the help desk back in '98, IP Australia had a tremendous website. And even at that time, they were leading on trying to help entrepreneurs and others understand the value of IP and using the internet. So we learned a lot. And I think all patent offices, although they probably won't admit it, have learned a lot, from IP Australia. So anyway, they've got a task force looking at the interface of AI and DLT for the IP space. I'm not too, apart from, there's not any direct benefit that an entrepreneur would get from this other than the availability of tools to understand better the value of their IP. That, I think, a more efficient use perhaps of IP is the best. So it's more, if you look at some of the companies that I know that are pretty good out there, there's Bernstein, which I believe Marco is based in, Marco Barilli, the head of Bernstein, CEO of Bernstein. I think they're based in Germany, and they've got very interesting IP protection software and tools that are available to entrepreneurs to look at. So I can send information to Makis and Elsa, which they can then forward to all of you to have a look at this. But Bernstein is one of them. IPWE is another one, who are using AI with DLT to look at patents in particular, but expanding it out and looking at how to, it really goes into the IP valuation, looking at the value of the IP and trying to get the AI to compare the IP that you've got with others in your industry space, and also looking at the real value of that. So you go deep into the data and you look at how good is this patent, basically. That's what it comes down to. AI can do that. I suppose the national patent offices will tell you that they can do the same, but it will take them longer to do it, whereas AI can do it almost instantaneously. And whereas an individual examiner at an IP office can do one, perhaps, examination per day, perhaps, or per few hours, an AI can do 1,000 in a few minutes. So the potential of AI there is more to do the volume, to go into the data, to pull out what's important, and to explain it, basically, to show what the value of this IP is. Excuse me. So I don't see, I mean, there are going to be benefits, but it's really the drive for the AI and the DLT is coming from the national offices. The national offices see what they can do with patents, they see what they can do with trademarks, with designs, and eventually I'm sure that it's going to be used for copyright. But I think that's going to be the main drive. sorry, Elsa, what were the other bits that you wanted to look at? Because I've lost a bit my train of thought.
No, that's all right. The other bit was, we talked about the latest trends, the intersection. I think we covered that point, unless one of our colleagues has a particular question on these aspects. I don't see any questions for the moment. I would like us to move on to the next point, which is related to tech scouting, early stage investment, and the importance of IP. We've covered that a little bit up to now, and what's in it for you. I do not know if there is something that you would like to add further. It was also related to what Yannis had asked regarding the pre-seed stage, and I think we've covered all these aspects. Is there something else you would like to add, Alex, at this point?
I think I would go back to the valuation of IP and just mention, I mean, there are tools out there that you can use to help you understand the value of your IP, which will help you to get ready for going to the investor community, etc., to look for funds, to make sure that you're investor ready. I think is extremely important. I mean, again, I'll send some links to Elsa and Makis and they can forward on, but apart from IPWE, there's Ingot, and even the help desk has some tools that can be used, and these are free. Obviously, if you go to a national patent office and you go to a commissioned service, it's free. If you go to someone like IPWE or Ingot, you might get a level of free, but eventually, if you want more detail, they're their business, they're going to want to have something back. So they can give you more detail, but it's going to cost eventually. So the initial help with understanding can be there, a sort of overview, but you can get more value, I suppose, for you as a startup, trying to understand things if you go to the free services. Help desks, the EUIP help desk, and the national patent offices. I can't emphasize enough, your national patent offices are where you should be going. The EPO as well has tools, and they all want you to help you. They all understand the value of the IP more than you do because it's their business, you know. But they're not they're not lawyers where they're there trying to see if they can get some business from you. They're there trying to help you. Eventually they'll say go to a lawyer perhaps, but they'll at least help you understand what you need to know, the basics basically, and be there not to hold your hand, but certainly to help you through the initial stages. It's awareness, the most important thing. Be aware of your IP, be aware that you must protect it. There are people out there that will help you without charging you. There are free services, make use of them. And if you want to get money into your business, you need to protect your IP.
Excellent. There were a couple of other questions, and I was wondering whether we could move to these ones. These relate to the first one relates to the recent discussions about patents.
Elsa, sorry.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about smart contracts, which we didn't.
Okay. Yeah. You're right.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Briefly, smart contracts are contracts that do automatic things when a certain set of actions are done. So that basically is a smart contract. There's a lot of discussion about them. I can send you some links which Elsa and Makis can pass on to you to learn a bit more. But that's basically, it's a contract that automatically does something when a certain set of rules are in place, and that then it comes in.
Alex, do you refer to it as an NFT use?
Non-fungible token.
Could it be non-fungible? Could an NFT be a smart contract?
An NFT is like a digital receipt, basically. That's what an NFT is, a digital receipt. I suppose that there could be some linkage, but I wouldn't like to say that one is the other. I think that the NFTs and the smart contracts can have some benefit together, but I can send you more information to read up about that. There's been some good things written about NFTs, and IBM and IPWE are doing things at the moment. I know lots of others are looking at this, and it's not only as regards art. They're looking at patents, because I think I said that a patent can be issued, but you don't necessarily know who the owner of the patent is, but an NFT could actually tell you who owns the patent. So it's like a digital receipt, because patents change hands, IP changes hands. You know, it is tradable. Sorry, that's the word, isn't it? IP is tradable, so it has value. If you secure it, you can do stuff with IP, basically. But smart contracts and NFTs, yes, I do see that there can be some linkage, but I would need to send you more information to have a read about what has been discussed on that.
Yeah, there's been a talk in my head about smart contracts and power supply. The closest. How does it? How exactly does it link this to?
I can't comment on that because I don't know. But certainly I can send some information to Elsa and Makis for them to pass on to you. I've not thought about the power side, but certainly they're interesting. They have a use.
You know,
but not everyone's convinced.
Okay. We'll get your email.
Yep, I'll send you some info.
Yes.
Okay,
pleasure.
Excellent. Okay, so the other question is about patents and the vaccines. There has been quite a lot of discussion recently, so happy to hear your comments, views on this, Alex.
Yeah, well, a friend of mine, Graham Dutfield, again, I'll send you some of the things that he's written, professor at Leeds University. He's written quite a bit. I think he did a recent article in Nature, but he cited that this has happened before. I believe he mentioned mosquito vaccine, where that had all patent restrictions, etc., were wiped on that. There's a big discussion on this, and I think many people were surprised that the states have actually agreed that they would like to see IP lifted. But I think, obviously in Europe, it's been a debate, but a split. I think some people saying yes, some people saying no. My feeling is that I don't know what benefit this would bring, because you don't get, if you develop a vaccine, it doesn't just come from one location. You need lots of bits to go into the vaccine, and I understand that just like car parts cross borders backwards and forwards, which we're not totally aware of. With vaccines, I'm told that the ingredients to make the vaccine can come from lots of different countries. So I don't know how. I mean, I think it would be nice to, from an ethical standpoint, to say, yes, let's waive IP, but I don't know if it's a magic wand. I don't think that it would make vaccines come any faster, because you still have supply chain issues. And even AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, I think, were complaining that they had production problems. So if the holders of the IP have production problems, then I'm sure that it's going to, and they're quite advanced tech companies, both of them. I would have thought that if we get it produced elsewhere, then they could have the same problems. But lifting of IP protection, I see no problem, but I know there is a debate one way or the other. I think it's the supply chain issues, as with many things, that would need to be addressed. That always often is the is the bottom line. Can you get the supply? Doesn't matter about whether it's protected or not, but can you get everything to make the cocktail to give the vaccine or whatever it is?
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I see that Makis has a question.
Alex, can you go one step back and help us understand what is all this debate about?
What, the vaccines?
Yeah, apart from removing the patent, or what is all about? Why there is such, why we have the debate to start with?
I suppose because they feel, I mean, it started at the WTO, I think it was. I think the World Trade Organization started this, and it was South Africa and India, I believe, who first brought this up at a meeting. I assume it's supply. They feel that they need more vaccines and the vaccines are just not being produced. I don't know. I mean, it could be that IP would help, but I think it's the supply chain. You could, if you've got freedom to put this together, you've got the tech, you've got the expertise, fine, but you need the ingredients, as I said, and I'm not sure about that. I believe I read somewhere that there's we're at the ceiling almost for the number of vaccines that we can produce globally. But we need a lot more. We need to go beyond that ceiling. But I don't know whether or not that releasing the IP or avoiding the IP would help. I think we would still need to know that the production issues are fine. You would need to have safety aspects to make sure that wherever this was being developed, they were not cutting corners. So I think there are headaches there, quite a few headaches.
So from what I understand, this would have been the last layer of the conversation about first you have to find who's going to manufacture it, that they have, they follow the standards and they have everything that is needed, blah, blah, blah. And once you have all this, only then it's a nice conversation to have about the patent. Correct?
Yes,
so,
yes, yeah.
So from what you're describing, at least to me, and maybe I'm the naive or stupid, it looks that we're having a conversation for no reason. I'm just trying to be nice and saying, remove the IP, just to be a good politician. And for your own interest, let's say you're saying, no, I need to protect my IP. But that's not the point.
Yes, but it could be that it's a political thing. Because if you look in Europe, you've got Germany saying no. You've got France saying yes. I think UK has said no. And so you've got two economies there that probably are more IP focused. The Germans, very much so. Patent lawyers would not be happy about seeing their business go out the window. Patent lawyers are dinosaurs, basically. Forgive me. If there's any patent lawyers in this Zoom, then apologies. But patent lawyers are traditionally dinosaurs. And I do say that having many patent lawyers as friends, but they don't like change. They don't like change. So yes, I think it's a political thing. It's a game. It's a game.
Okay, so I see that Jérôme has raised the hand as well. Jérôme, welcome on board.
Thank you. Yeah, just quite quickly, I was wondering what would be the probability to see this going through. If you think that really something might happen and they might, open the patents or something like that, or if it just like a political move, like a smoke screen somehow, to just say that they're not really ready to export the vaccines that much from the US, I mean. And yeah, what you thought about that? Is it really something that we're going to see, or?
Well, you saw it with, as I said, I'll send Elsa and Makis the comments from Graham, Professor Dutfield, for you to read. But he said it's been done with malaria, Therefore, why can't it be done with COVID? So I don't know. At the moment, I think it's a bit of a political football, and people are just trying. I mean, Macron, I think, likes to be different, so he straight away came out and said, you know, yes, we agree with that, but it needs everyone to agree. You can't just have one company, and I don't think. I'm not sure, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure if there's a French company that's actually producing the vaccine, whereas you've got a German company producing the vaccine, and you've got a British company producing the vaccine. I know you've got a Swedish company. I don't know what the Swedes have said, but I think it's political at the moment, like political.
All right.
But I will send what Graham wrote, because Graham's a nice chap, and he's done a lot, and you should connect with him. He does lots of good work in the ecology side.
Cool, thanks.
Okay. Excellent. Any other questions? I think up to now we've covered all the points that we had thought about covering. Makis, correct, Alex?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know if Konstantinos has something to ask, because if I remember correct, he's in the agrotech, and maybe there are issues that he's facing that I am not aware. Konstantine, are you here?
Yes, good day.
Yes,
This
Konstantine.
time I have corrected my microphone issues. So about the IPs in the agro field, yes, there are several, and there are issues being had with procedures and with technologies. But at the current time, at this moment, we don't have anything to ask. I've heard a lot of interesting things about blockchain being used in the patent processing offices, and it's quite an achievement. It's something I've never heard of before. Because we're using blockchain in the agrofield business. So maybe I have a question there. If the main problem with our implementation was choosing the platform to build the blockchain processes on. We finally went with Ethereum. So if two patent offices wish to exchange data, would it be possible to do that if they have different platforms that they use? Of course, it will be possible, but how difficult would it be? That's my question. And it's something that we are facing with other let's say programs being developed for agriculture that use blockchain. We don't know how to communicate with them on enabling DLTs and smart contracts, where we're having issues. So would it be possible to?
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. I mean, two things. First, well, three things basically. I have got contacts with quite a few people that are dealing with DLT in the agricultural sphere, and certainly that's something that Graham Dutfield is also dealing with. So likewise, when Elsa and Makis send around information, get in contact with Graham, because Graham would be able to help you. And there are others that I can. There's some Dutch companies as well that I know that are very, very good on the agricultural side of blockchain. I wish I could remember the name of it off the top of my head. I can't, but I will make sure that I send that to Makis as well. Basically, yes, there are standards. All of the IP offices have standards, and IP has standards, and so the exchange of information is possible, and there would not be any issues with IP offices exchanging information, even if they use different blockchain. But I must admit, I would guess that most of them probably are also using Ethereum and IBM. So I would guess that the patent offices would be all just about using the same system. I can't imagine that they would have any problem with exchanging information between each other. If that was your question.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. So, Makis?
I think we all spoke. I don't see anyone else raising hands.
Okay. Yanis wanted to share some observations he had with us. Yanis, would you like to comment at this stage?
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Elsa. I think that most of the pieces of the puzzle somehow addressed from Alex, and thank you, Alex, for the very fruitful and interesting and informative all of your thoughts. It was very, very good presented to us, and your answers very concrete. I would like to share my thoughts with the team that we have here, enable the leaders, and maybe we need to put some effort and try to break down, let's say, what is the IP and how this connects with the startup ecosystem and the different kind of players into this ecosystem, and basically how you can couple your business strategy with your IP strategy. I would say more or less with your investment plan, more with your marketing plan, etc. How you could benefit from the IP when you're going to meet with investors, with angels investors, or with venture capitals, etc. So maybe we can take a little bit more later or during another session to brainstorm on this area and the different angle that Alex brought into the ecosystem, I would say. Yeah. Thanks.
Remember the free tools. That's the most important thing. There are things out there to help you, and they don't cost. You know, your National Patent Office, the Commission, even the EUIPO, they have a fund, and they're there to help SMEs, and they'll help pay for an evaluation of your IP and also for you to trademark. I'm not sure about design, but certainly they've got money available to help SMEs, and it's for any European. You have to be in the EU member state.
What about you then?
Oh no, UK doesn't. But I must admit that Boris has put in quite a bit of money to help it, and the UK IP office is very good. You go to their website and they have some very nice tools, and they have Wallace and Gromit to help you understand the importance of IP as well. So you can't beat that. If you know Wallace and Gromit, sorry, you might all not know Wallace and Gromit, but cartoon characters. So
okay,
cartoon characters.
Excellent. Okay, so I guess we are right on time. Alex, I cannot say how grateful I am for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us. Always a pleasure exchanging with you.
Thank you, Elsa.
Well, thank you. And I would like also to thank our colleagues that have been here with us today. It has been a very enriching session and quite different from the ones that we've had up to now. Makis, I'd just like to give the floor to the creator of these meetings.
Thank you. Alex, as Elsa said, and everybody, thank you so much for your time. I have an installer here that decided right now to make a okay, problem solved. Thank you very much for your time, especially in UK. When we started, it was 8:30 in the morning, and I can understand that it takes some effort to, you know, leave on a Sunday morning your bed at 8 o'clock to be ready for a bunch of people who are interested all of a sudden to hear about intellectual property. I hope we will have a chance to meet again. I will hope that, you know, what you shared with us today, it will at least raise some awareness on the ecosystem about intellectual property, and maybe we can have another conversation a little bit more focused if needed on, you know, specific things, because right now we just got an introduction to it and it wasn't technical at all, and we really appreciate it. Thank you again, everybody, for being here with us this Sunday. Χρόνια πολλά to the Greek, not the Greek, sorry, to all the mothers. It's Mother's Day today, and we will renew our meeting in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks for inviting me, Makis, Elsa. And I think the main thing is just remember that IP is important. You've got to protect, you've got to be aware of it, have a strategy, make use of the free tools that are out there. There's lots of people willing to help. Just ask.
I would have started with the free tools.
Alex, we hope to see you soon in sunny Greece.
Oh, fingers crossed. Yeah, sounds good. Some nice wine and moussaka. And Slovakia.
That's what my tutor.
You have to try the...
Sorry, Makis.
No. I'm just saying he has to try the feast. Moussaka is last year. Now we have a very, very tasty fish.
Right, look forward to it. Take care.
Bye, Alex. Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right. I'll email you with links, and then you're welcome to pass to anyone my email. And take care. Ciao.
Thank you so much.
For 10 euros a link, I can do anything.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Μάκη, ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ.
Να, εγώ ευχαριστώ.
Και την Elsa as a moderator. She was very...
Τίποτα, παιδιά, τίποτα.
Very to the point.
To the point, exactly.
Έχω εκπαιδευτεί κατάλληλα γι' αυτό.
Πάντως είναι αρκετά δύσκολο το θέμα. Δεν ήξερα ότι έχει τόσο μεγάλη διάσταση.
Λοιπόν, κοιτάξτε λίγο να δείτε.